Hello, Alexander. Nice to meet you. Thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Nice to meet you. Hello to Vienna from Berlin.
Hello to Berlin. Good to have you. Alexander, you are the head of group corporate M&A and legal affairs at Bombardier, but you're also a mediator, a lecturer, a speaker. You're someone very keen to alternative dispute resolution methods. So I wanted to talk to you because I was very curious to learn more about what the current situations are that you're dealing with, what kind of negotiations, maybe mediations. How are you dealing with the current situation?
Yeah, I'm happy to share my observations. Due to my role and responsibility and my legal team's role and responsibility, we are currently involved in various M&A transactions, outsourcing transactions, and we can observe two things. Number one, and that's a no-brainer, transactions are not progressing as fast as they should and could because the businesses are distracted by dealing with the corona situation. And the other situation that I'm observing is it makes a big difference to no longer be able to have face-to-face meetings. So we were used to having conference calls, but we were also appreciating personal meetings where we could interact directly with one another. And now we have the option of doing that via video link, just like you and me. But I would say that's a big change for some of us, and particularly due to the fact that I'm involved in international negotiations, because a lot of the transactions I'm working on are not playing in Germany or in Europe, but playing in Asia, playing in Latin America. It's difficult because stereotypically the colleagues are not as used to video links. They have different cultural expectations. For example, in India, it's very important to have a face-to-face personal relationship and establish that relationship, and that you cannot do currently. So I would say the intercultural aspect of high-stake negotiations is currently more difficult to deal with.
Can you share a bit more about what, just in broad abstract terms, maybe what the kind of negotiations are that the challenges are bringing right now?
Well, I cannot talk about the details of the transactions, but just to give you a feeling, one transaction I'm involved in relates to outsourcing services, and the company that's offering the outsourcing services is based in India. And to negotiate with colleagues from India whom you have never met and you were supposed to meet them face to face is a challenge. And you need to find a way to accomplish three things, in my opinion. Number one is, I think with conference calls and video calls nowadays, you need to find a way to establish a relationship or a level of trust before you have your first video negotiation. Because otherwise, a video conversation, just like our negotiation, is very direct. You're in the face of the other person. And if you don't know the other person, that can be very uncomfortable for some people, particularly for people who are not used to this level of direct communication. So here my advice would be, if you know you have a conversation, and be it a difficult negotiation, and you know that you don't know the people on the other side, and you don't really know who's leading the negotiation, then I would say it makes good sense to prepare yourself and your own team for the situation, but then also to arrange, let's say, a short call where you just grab the phone and reach out to your counterpart in the negotiation, just to use the phone as a first barrier where it's not as direct as a video call, and to use the conversation over the phone just to get to know each other, to understand what's going on, how do we plan the negotiation, who is responsible for what, so that when you have the first video negotiation with a broader team, you have already established a level of trust, a level of relationship building, so you don't start from 0 to 100.
I love that idea, reaching out to people beforehand and make sure you get to know each other a bit on a personal level. And even if you negotiate about the negotiation, what's the process going to look like? Who's going to handle what? Who's in charge? Who's on your team? Just to dip your toe in the water. That's the online equivalent of arriving 20 minutes early and having a coffee together. Some, at least as far as.
Or what I like before a big negotiation or a big mediation is you meet the evening before and you have a nice dinner. I mean, in the end, we're social animals. We need to drink, we need to eat, but that element you currently don't have. So I'm convinced that even though the situation may be difficult and we're not used to it, me personally, it brings me down to the very basic rules of preparing for negotiation, structuring a negotiation, and really doing the basics before you actually start the negotiation. Because otherwise you can enter into a very uncomfortable situation with people you don't know, you've never seen them, and that could become a barrier in the video link or in the video conference.
Agreed. What are the other two things that you need to accomplish? You said the first one is relationship building before. Was there anything else?
And thereby building a level of trust.
Trust.
The second thing that I am observing works very well is that you need to apply a very adaptive style of communication. Now, again, that's a no-brainer. You can probably read about that in every other book on communications or negotiation, that you need to be adapting to your counterpart. But I would say in a situation like this, it's even more true. So in order to be adaptive in your communication style or in your negotiation style or mediation style, I think you need to invest proper time for getting to know the other team, getting to know the other team members, and understanding what do they need from you, or what do they need from the negotiation, the transaction, the deal. What interests do they have personally and business-wise, so that you have a good understanding and can act accordingly and adjust accordingly. And I think if you do that, and if you really in these times focus a lot more than usual on the other side than on your own interests and your own way of negotiating, then I think that can really unleash a great level of comfort zone in the negotiation.
It creates a lot more trust again, which then again creates much better results for both sides. The more you can put yourself into the other side's shoes and understand what their communication style is, because especially as you say, over the longer distance, some people have more direct communication, others have more indirect, others are more hierarchical, others are more level playing field. So it's quite important to find out very consciously from the beginning, where is that, how would that person like to be communicated with?
Yeah. And another aspect I find useful is to also understand that the personal situation of the people is very different in these days. I was interacting with people in South Africa the other day. The country is completely shut down. I was interacting with people in India. They are locked out. The technical means are not the same around the globe. What may work for us, because we're so used to a steady internet connection and good hardware and software equipment, is not a given in other places around the world. But still, these colleagues are doing their job the best they can under the given circumstances. And here, I think being humble and being empathetic and showing a high level of understanding for the situation, the individual situation is very important.
Because in one way we're all more in the same boat than ever in the history of at least our lifetimes. We've never had a situation where everyone is in such a similar predicament as we are at the moment. Any final tips for people who are making their way through muddy waters and negotiations at the moment that you'd like to share?
No, I would say that's about it.
They're awesome. Yes, they're so good. I'm pressing for more. I can hear the professor talk here in every moment.
I think what I find quite useful is, because I like to prepare, and one managing director of one of our legal entities once said preparation is 90% and then execution is 10%. But I would say the current situation really gives people who are not that used to investing adequate time to prepare, to align the negotiation team, which in my case is very often cross-functional. So I negotiate on my side with a lot of non-lawyers, same on the other side. I think it forces us in a nice way to deliberately step back, prepare internally, prepare vis-a-vis the negotiation team on the other side, and then start the game.
That would be fantastic news if the situation would incentivize people to get more diligent on their preparations.
Yeah.
They say the less you, that's probably a very brutal quote, but I think it's the US Navy that says the more you sweat in training, the less you bleed in battle. And from my side, I often get the feeling that people come underprepared and they think they can wing it, and then the outcomes will never be the same as if you sat down and you had a diligent structure of how you prepare. So I'm loving that as a last recommendation. Now is a good time to start getting more active about that and practicing that and being much more aware of the steps that good preparation for a negotiation will need. Well, thank you so much.
If I may.
Please.
It's not from me. I was reading about it some years ago, and I wish I invented it, but I didn't. So it's the principle of the 3 O's. I don't know if you've heard about that.
I have not.
In every negotiation or in every mediation or in every, let me call it, business interaction, at the beginning, you ask 3 questions. What's the objective of our negotiation? What's the outcome that we want to accomplish together in the negotiation? And what's the output we will create at the end of the negotiation? And that could be a signed agreement or a settlement agreement, you know what I mean? But really thinking in terms of what's the objective, what's the output, and what's the outcome? That also helps me oftentimes to prepare. It's quite simple. I didn't invent it. I'm grateful I came across it. It's
simple, but it's very streamlined and very to the point. I'm loving it. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for all these fantastic negotiation tips, Alexander. All the best to you and your team. Stay healthy. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.